Frances Hines,
Is it terribly rude of me to ask your age, Frances?
94. I was happily married for 60 years and I've been in this house 65 years and I wouldn't like to leave it because there's too many memories.
Now, I'm talking to you today because I got a tip-off, I have to admit. I was given a tip-off that you'd be a fascinating person to include in our stories about people from the Isle of Man who had some part in the war in some way, shape or form. But before we get to that, I want to know a little bit about you, Frances. So tell me a little bit about where you were born and where you grew up.
Well, I was born in Bruce, out at Lonnon. I had 2 brothers, 1 sister, and we came to Groudle. We went to Onken School. What else?
And actually, you being in Groudle going to Onken School was the feature of another documentary, I think, on the radio that Louise Quirk did with you. She talked to you about it, didn't she?
Yeah.
So, and the reason she talked to you about it was because it was a very interesting life you had down there.
Well, I don't know really. My father fed the sea lions. And we used to go, there was a train coming from Groudle to the Glen into the sea lions, and we used to hop along and have a ride on the train, and it was lovely.
And what was life like for you? Because I'm assuming you didn't necessarily have the mod cons.
We didn't have any electric, and there was just water from a little spring in the hedge. There was no mud cons. The toilet was right down about 50 yards from the road, a dry toilet. And then, of course, the toilet paper was always the news of the world or something.
Best place for it, I think a lot of people would say, to be fair. And you were saying to me that living that way, it sort of put something in your mind, didn't you, that maybe you might not want to live that way forever. And so you decided to embark on a bit of an adventure, didn't you?
I did, yes. I decided, I'd seen the auxiliaries, the ATS girls, on the promenade, and they were attached to a regiment that was guarding the prisoners of war on the promenade. And I had a school friend, and she said, let's join the army, because they're calling them up in England. So we did that, and we went and tried to enlist, but we had to have a medical first. So I went to Dr. Vernon in Woodburn Road and had a medical, and I passed. And I asked my parents first, could I go, because I was only 17, and I joined. And then my friend said, my mother can't let me go, she won't let me go, so I had to go home on my own. So I was terrified. So, however, I had a regimental route and a travel warrant, and I went down and got on the boat to Fleetwood. The boat went to Fleetwood, and then I got the train into Lancaster. And there I was. I had to go to the quartermaster stores and get my uniform, have a parade, and how to salute and how to march. The food was poor because I was terribly rationed. There was nothing much.
So what sort of thing did you get to eat?
Like, we call them dog biscuits, or dog biscuits, and then jam, and then the porridge. It was powdered milk on the porridge. It was really terrible.
That's not good sustenance for someone who's going out to fight a war.
And then we went on the square, the barrack square, and marched and did all this. And then we had a selection test. And the the fellow said to me, "What would you like to be?" And I said, "I think I'd like to be an orderly." I thought, well, I've no knowledge of anything else. So I had a selection test, and there was a questionnaire to fill in. And later on that day, he said, "You're going to London." And I was terrified. And he said, "You're going to be a clerk. You're going to a college to be a clerk." So I was given a regimental route and went to London, into Hampstead. And there I met a lot of girls that was going to college. So they took me there, really, on the underground. And I was touch typing, and I was taught to shorthand, and that was lovely. So I had 6 weeks there, and then the posting came. They said you were joining a regiment, artillery regiment, and I said, "Well, can I go to the Isle of Man?" And they said, "You're going to Edinburgh." And that was that, so that was good.
And were all of the duties that you did were mostly sort of secretarial, were they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I was in the heavy artillery, the 158 Regiment. And there was the 540, the 541 and the 548 batteries attached to them.
So how long were you actually in service for?
4.5 years.
And you make it sound like it was actually rather jolly.
Well, really it was. I met friends, lovely friends, and I had leave every 3 months. They taught me things that I've never would imagine, and I think now boys and girls should go, especially the boys from about 16 to 18 for discipline.
And so what was sort of happening in the rest of the world at this time?
Air raids in London. I could hear the doodlebugs going over in the night, and the bombing, and in the city. And the undergrounds were packed with people sheltering, and then you had to sit in your shelter until they all clear. I was terribly frightened, and I thought I would like to go home, but I settled down.
But you've described to us a bit about what your life was like as a child, and it was very sparse, wasn't it? And so to go from that to living in big cities must have been a really big thing for you.
I couldn't cross the roads. When I got to Piccadilly, I thought myself, how will I cope to the other side of the street? It was so busy. Mm-hmm. But I coped.
So were there many other women from the island, young girls from the island, that joined the forces?
I never seen any, I've never met any.
Because there was quite a few men, weren't there, that went, and families that were affected.
Yeah, and I was in a mixed battery. Those men there, but they were too old to go to the forces, go overseas.
How did they react to the fact that there were women joining up?
Oh, I think they liked it. They liked it. Mm-hmm. But it was an experience I wouldn't have missed.
So if you had the chance to do it again, you'd do it the same way, would you?
Well, when I came home, I thought to myself, why have I come home? It was so good. Company.
And you've got, I love the fact that beside us here, there is a photo of you. Just describe this picture for us.
Oh, that was taken in Newcastle, this picture. And my cousin from Canada had joined the forces, and he came, and we went to have photographs taken. I was about 20 there. Yeah, 20.
And tell us about the uniform.
Well, when we came into the quartermaster stores, when I joined up, you got a cap, a tunic, a skirt, 2 pairs of stockings, two pairs of white cotton knickers, and then 2 silky knickers like rayon knickers with elastic on the knees. And you had a lanyard and 2 shirts, and then you had to have a khaki collar, a tie, but I couldn't fasten it properly, and I had to learn how to fasten the tie. And then we had a badge there, and you had to have them all cleaned every morning. When you got up, you had to clean your badge, and I think the badge is there somewhere, Lovey. The hat badge.
You've still got it?
Yeah, there's the badge, the ATS auxiliaries, and then you put the button through there and cleaned it. And you had to get up in the morning and get your grey blankets folded and exactly, and everything was all laid up, and then a straw mattress and a straw pillow.
Oh, straw.
Yeah, it was prickly and rough.
And there's some medals here as well, isn't there? Tell us about these medals.
Well, I got the service medal, and then I had the defence medal. My daughter sent away from them for me. It was quite a surprise. Very nice.
So what is one of the things, or some of the things, that you're most proud of from your time being in service?
I'm proud of having the gumption to join up and enjoy it. And I thought I was doing something by doing that. Yeah, playing my part. Mm.
Do you know much about what your work was for and how it helped?
No, I never knew what it would involve. And then I had to do the codes, work it out, and in the mornings the officer would come and do this, do that. Dobson, he never called you Francis or anything else. It was Dobson, do this and do that. Mm.
And so the codes, because that must have been fascinating. What sort of thing did these things say when you were sort of breaking down the codes? What were some of the messages?
They are all air raids. Mm.
Because I suppose, because you I believe you left school at 14,
yes.
Just heard that, and so the skills that you would have learnt when you were in service then must have been very helpful to you when you sort of then started the employment world.
Oh yes, I gained a lot of knowledge, and mixing with people, because I was lonely where I came from, and it was good that I was able to mix with everybody and do everything. I was the cashier in Wilkins for a long time, and that was something. And then after a while, I did home caring for people, elderly people, and I got a job caring for Reverend Dushaw's, and he was 100. He lived to 103. There was about 3 of them all in the 90s. And imagine me now with 94. Yeah.
What is the secret to being as good and sprightly and healthy and with it as you are at 94 then, Frances?
Well, I think young. I'm not old. And I look after myself well. I have good food, and I'm happy because I've got a good daughter, one and only, and she looks after me, and I care for myself. I wash, and and do everything, cook. But Jill does my shopping, and anything I'd like her to do, she does. And she takes me out in the car.
What do you think it is about your mum then that keeps her so sprightly at this age?
The main thing is she's very positive. She always thinks good thoughts. She works her brain. She spends a lot of the time of the day doing crosswords and competitions, exercising the brain. She just generally thinks well and does as much. She just does so much for herself.
I want a card from the Queen, if she's alive. And that'll be nice.
So did you have brothers and sisters yourself?
Yes, I had 3 brothers, but the younger one was killed coming from school, and the 2 boys, older boys, one joined he's farming, and he joined the Home Guard, and then Jimmy, the oldest boy, he joined the army, and he was in the Coventry Blitz, and he was discharged with ill health coming back.
There you go.
There's something I didn't know.
I don't think he was injured, but just like a nervous breakdown with it, he was discharged.
Because there must have been so many of the young men that were affected in that way because of what they saw.
The Coventry Blitz was terrible.
So you all your family were actually sort of involved and affected. It just sheds a totally different light on it, doesn't it, Jill? The idea that now knowing what you know about your grandfather and hearing about, you know, the one son coming back from the Blitz and the idea that his daughter went off the forces, how he must have felt. It adds a different perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah, it must have brought everything back to him about his experience in the First World War, and it must have been very frightening for him. And his 2 brothers were actually killed in the First World War. They were blown up and their bodies never discovered. And he had this fear of war, and it always surprised me that he allowed Mum to actually go off to it.
What do you know about his service, where he was posted?
Yeah, he was in the Army Service Corps, and that was sort of providing equipment, driving horse and cart up to the front lines with supplies. And he was based in Salonika, and the war between the British and Bulgarians, and he caught malaria as a result of conditions there, and was always quite ill after the war when he returned home. So it really surprises me that Mum was allowed to go.
And did you actually know your grandfather?
No, he died he died quite young, so he died before I was born. But we have since got replica medals that he would have received, and we've also been able to buy replica hat badges for himself and also for the regiments that his brothers were in, which is just nice to have.
So, Frances, what do you remember about what you? Because we're just learning that your father probably didn't say very much at all. Did you know anything really about his time taking part in the war?
No, he never said anything about it. No.
And what sort of man was he? Because they do say quite often that the men that returned from the First World War were quite affected.
Well, he was the quietest man I know or knew. He never associated with anyone. He never held a conversation with anyone. He was terribly quiet.
And also, you used to say that when you'd have the radio on, he would be quite frightened when he would hear announcements on the radio.
My brother went out looking for rabbits when we lived at Groudle, and he came home and he said, "I've seen a U-boat." And my father was crying, and he said, oh dear, the war will come." And then Attlee come on the war to say we're at war, and he cried, and it was terrible. He said, "Oh my God, it's war." Yeah.
So looking back on it now, knowing what you do know about the fact that he had that awful time with his family as well, with his brothers too, does it now make sense as to why he was quiet?
Probably, yes.
So when you did go to your mum and dad and said that you wanted to be a part of this and join up and do your bit, so do you remember what your dad actually said to you?
I said, "Can I go to the forces?" And he said, "What do you want in that for?" And then he said, "Ask your mother."
So he just passed it over really to her so he didn't have to deal with it.
He didn't commit himself.
Gosh, what a thing to find that out about your family though, Jill. It must have been quite a shock.
Yes, but it's been very interesting just to follow their history really and know what they really experienced.
And the unfortunate thing is, because the wars were quite close together, you know, in the grand scheme of things, so many families must have experienced this at the time, mustn't they? When you did return, what did you end up doing with your life then?
I got married first. A boy from school, high school. More or less, my childhood sweetheart at school, because I was 11 and he was 13 and we went out together and I thought, this is lovely. And then when I was 17, I said, I'm going to the forces, and he was upset about it, so her never. When I went in March 42, when I was in Scotland, about 6 weeks after, my husband, my former husband, came and looked me up in Inverness, and he was in Aberdeen. He'd joined the RAF police, so that was able to see him again. I was demobbed in 46 and came home, and then he came home in 1947. As soon as I met him, I knew it was my husband. And then we got married in 48. We have had Jill. It was lovely.
And what was his war? What was his experience of wartime?
Well, he was in the RAF police, and later on he was sent to India. After a while, he went to Japan, where the atom bomb had just fallen.
He did actually take quite a few photographs, which we've got here of in Japan, and I'm hoping to piece together. We have been able to get a copy of his war records from the ministry, and with the help of photographs, we're trying to piece together where he had actually been at different times.
And what did he tell you about his time out there? Because what a thing to see.
Well, he said the whole ground was flattened and there was people, bones everywhere, skeletons, and there wasn't a blade of grass. It was so terrible.
Did he ever tell you what he thought about the fact that they used the bomb?
He never said. Yeah.
All these things that people experience, and sometimes it takes a bit to tease it out of them, doesn't it? But looking at these photos, they're just wonderful. And some of them really quite graphic as well, aren't they?
Yes. And luckily, he's well labelled on the backs of the photographs. There's particular days, dates and years and where they were taken. So I'm hoping to piece together a sort of a story really.
And did he talk to you much about it?
No, not really. Never really talked about the wartime at all. And now that he's gone, I really wished I'd asked him more questions at the time. So that's why it's nice now to put together what we can.
Yeah.
Especially with Mum's memory of her experiences. He's back here. Oh, this is a picture of Sandy Gerard, his wedding picture, just after the wartime. Oh. He's the man that's just had his 100th birthday. Lives in Canal Court.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
That was, he married a local girl. She was in the Wrens when he met her. He was from Scotland. He's really Scotch.
It must have been an amazing experience. We've got pictures here in the album of Dad actually riding a camel in India, in Karachi. He's actually travelling by camel. And when you think about it, the experience, not just going to England, but actually going off to a foreign country that you've never seen before, you've no experience, he's probably never seen any foreign people, heard a foreign language.
No.
It's amazing what an experience it would have been, and what we'd have to get used to. We used to have books. He had to learn some basic Japanese and some basic Indian languages as well, which I think's amazing, so that he could manage in court.
What an experience!
Yeah. Only Dad took these, we wouldn't have any record. Really, it was good that he.
How was his family affected by the war? Do you know much about his side of things? Did he have any brothers or sisters that might have gone off to war? Do you know, Frances?
He only had one brother, and he was in the Merchant Navy.
Oh.
He was in the Dunkirk. Yeah, getting them from there. Terrible.
And it's one of those things that, we recently were talking on the programme about how important it is to remember, and it is, isn't it?
Yes, it's very important to remember, and also to, I think, realise what they went through for everybody that was kept safe at home.
And what do you think about the fact that your mum at 17 made that step and actually joined the forces?
I think it's amazing, because she'd lived a quiet life in the countryside. She'd never seen city life. She didn't know what would be out there, and I think it was really brave of her to go off there to do a bit for the war.
How does that make you feel, hearing her say that?
Proud, very, 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 very proud.